I'll start off with what I was going to talk about before we press record button. We've got some furniture for the spare room earlier on. So I haven't got any shelving. I've got a bookcase literally behind this camera. That's pretty much it in terms of shelving and storage. So I need to get some more for the spare room to put all my my painting figurines in. And we went to the second-hand store and we got a set of shelves with a little mirror on them. So now we've got a set of shelves to put figurines on next to another set of shelves that we've had for ages. And it's really, really cool. We've also got a bed frame to make up and a mattress now. So we can actually put a full bed in there. So things are moving along. We've been here now for over a year now, as of release of this podcast. So yeah, we're homeowners. I'm an adult.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, you got a bed.
I have a second bed. Yay! So if you ever have an argument, I can put Ghost on that bed.
Yeah, so in terms of writing with me, I've been publishing quite a few more personal essays over on my Substack. I'm now up to about 15 subscribers, which is really nice. Woo! I didn't think I'd get any, apart from, all my friends just going, oh yeah, sympathy subscription. So it's quite nice that there's people out there who are reading my work, who are resonating with it, and they're starting to subscribe to my work. It's quite a nice feeling, actually.
You're a writer, Andy. You're a writer.
I am, but I'm also taking a tiny bit of a step back in terms of the screenwriting at the moment. Because with everything that's been happening in my personal life, I found like my mental capacity has been quite limited. We like to say we've not got the spoons for things. So my spoons are very few. So if I'm making several cups of tea at once and I'm using all these different teaspoons for all these different cups of tea, I sort of run out really fast. I'm just trying to allocate my spoons accordingly. So there might be times where I'm not going to be all about screenwriting. I'm going to be maybe my Substack, maybe my fiction writing, or maybe I'll just drop back entirely. But I'm still, it's still one of my passions there. I'm just trying to make sure I'm navigating this in a healthier way at the moment.
And that's completely valid, and it's very important to set yourself your own kind of boundaries and keep yourself in check with that sort of thing.
Yes. No negative roundabouts, remember. Speaking of script writing, we have a special guest today.
We do have a special guest today. It's a bit of a short preamble today because obviously we've got to bring the special guest in. But you may have mentioned in the last podcast that I had a script read at a script writing group, which is called Script Writing East Midlands, or Script East Midlands. I think it's changed its name recently. We have managed to get the host and I'm going to say the leader of that
founder?
Group. Sounds a bit wrong, but the
founder. It's not a cult.
The cult leader of Script East Midlands. We have Hugh from SWEM, who's going to be joining us and talking to us a little bit about his writing journey and kind of what inspired him to start that script writing group. Not cult. Hopefully you enjoy this, and if you're watching from SWEM, hi. If you're not watching from SWEM and you are in the East Midlands area, I fully recommend, if you are into script writing and you're from that area, that you hit Hugh up for another meet, that sort of thing. And maybe we can meet you someday for a read.
So it's been a really great group to get to know people. You can get feedback on your scripts, and he's expanding the repertoire of Script East Midlands now. There's going to be workshops, there's going to be societal events, community events, that sort of thing. So if you want to join it now, it's baby phase.
Baby phase, baby steps. And I believe this will probably already have happened by the time this podcast goes out, but podcast friend Devon is going to be doing a workshop in September, not in the same location but in the same city, and I'm going to that. So if you are in that area and you are into script writing, that sort of thing, so I'm going to go to Devon's workshop in September. Sit back and enjoy our lovely conversation with Hugh Dichmont from SWEM, and let us know what else you'd like to see in the future podcasts.
Over to Hugh. So welcome to Path to Publication, the podcast, Hugh. It's nice to have you on.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you feeling today?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, okay. Enjoying some seasonal sunshine.
We would love an introduction from you, Hugh. Who are you and what sort of writing do you do?
Sure. So my name is Hugh Dichmont. I'm a scriptwriter based in Nottingham, from Nottingham as well. Most of the stuff that I've had, or in fact, all the stuff that I've had that is out in the world, that has been out in the world, has been via theatre or audio. So podcast, comedy, drama, or stage plays, short, medium, and long. But I'm also a screenwriter as well, an aspiring screenwriter. So I do what most aspiring screenwriters do. I write scripts, save them as a PDF, and then almost no one looks at them. Occasionally, they get read by people at competitions who might sometimes like them a bit. I've had a little bit of success here and there, again, mostly with playwriting, but increasingly trying to diversify. I've always been passionate about TV and film, and just trying to make headway in those forms, really. Just writing lots of specs, submitting to competitions, trying to collaborate, make stuff, and get my foot in the door.
You definitely do a lot more than I do.
Yeah, we feel like the students and you're the teacher, and we feel like we're kind of like trying not to like show up the teacher in a way.
Hey, I mean, I don't know which movie teacher I would be. Maybe I'd be Ryan Gosling's one who's addicted to crack in whatever movie that was. I mean, the crack is a metaphor in this case, and also the closeness to Ryan Gosling in any way, shape, or form. So maybe I'm neither of those things. So I'm not addicted to crack, nor am I of Hollywood A-list height or build.
You can shoot for the stars here. It's fine. You don't have to put yourself down. What I really want to know here is, obviously, you are an aspiring screenwriter at the moment, as we all are. What are your earliest writing influences that you can remember, or ones that still kind of influence you today?
Sure. I mean, the stuff that I watched a lot of as a child that I think got me writing as a child. I was never the kid that wrote short stories or anything like that. Really, I did kind of make my own comics a little bit, but I wasn't a big comic reader either. I think writing comics was just sort of an accessible form for a child who couldn't really be bothered to write. Well, essentially, I was storyboarding, really, is what I realized I was doing. But the stuff that I grew up watching was Red Dwarf was a massive influence when I was little. My mum knitted me dreadlocks so I could be Lister, which is tragic. I
think
she
you'd
also
make an amazing Lister.
I mean, a friend of mine who's a poet has been Craig Charles's poet in residence on Six Music, and so I've never met Craig Charles, but seeing my friend's face pop up on Craig Charles's Instagram incites deep jealousy within me. But yeah, I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Red Dwarf to the point at which my mum knitted me dreadlocks to go on the back of my hair, to pin to the back of my hair, and also bought me non-alcoholic beer so I could pretend to be a beer swigging, layabout space guy. So yeah, I loved Red Dwarf, and I remember actually, looking at your questions before today, I remembered that actually the first script I ever wrote was when I was about 8 years old, and I wrote it on, I think it was an electric typewriter with my friend, who was also obsessed with Red Dwarf, and it was an episode of Red Dwarf which lasted about a page, which was called Moon Boots, and there were about some kind of moon boots that had some kind of, they came to life or something like that and wreaked havoc for about a page. So yeah, Red Dwarf, but also I was into Whose Line Is It Anyway, or the sort of early 90s fare of like comedy, really. So Simpsons as well, obviously. So it was growing up, they were the things that really when I started to write, I think they exerted their influence in one way or another. That's talking about very young, as a child, and before I even thought about writing being a possibility. I think those are things that exerted to the way that I played or interacted or stuff that I wanted to do creatively. Because what I did before I went into writing, I thought I wanted to be an artist for a long time, and that was because I wanted initially as a child to be a cartoonist. So again,
Same.
it was always about It was about storytelling, but cartoons were what I consumed. So Simpsons, a lot of 90s mediocre and not so mediocre TV. And yeah, that was how it manifested really through art. And I think it comes back to those cartoons really. So Ren and Stimpy was also a massive influence at that time as well.
I love the Red Dwarf being a huge influence because it's one of my influences on my comedic writing.
You know what? There's some things haven't aged well, but actually, I rewatched series 1 of Red Dwarf during the pandemic, and actually, it holds up pretty well. And you can't say that for a lot of sitcoms, really. That
they're very of that era.
Are gone. Yeah, absolutely. Of any era, really. You go long enough, but I think there was enough about it. It's kind of quite bleak, which is what I like about it. The early series was very British, very bleak and grey, and I think it does what British comedies do best, really. So yeah,
I think I heard that they wrote one of the really early ideas of it on a beer mat.
That sounds like something you do.
Yeah, I mean, as a child, I was reading all the kind of the novels as well, the Red Dwarf novels, and I would get every year I would get all kinds of albums and companions and stuff like that. So I was properly obsessed. So yeah, I think the guys behind it, they seem to have a really strong. I mean, it feels like the kind of thing that you could only create as a partnership because it had a strong, in the same way that Peep Show couldn't have been written by one person, or The Office couldn't have been written by one person. I think a lot of the best things come out of two friends that have got a dynamic that works, and they bring that dynamic into the script. So yeah, I love Red Dwarf, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came out of a pub-like conversation, because like I said, it feels like it's born out of a friendship, really.
You definitely feel like it's like mates down the pub just chatting shit about what would happen if we were on a spaceship and it was 30 million years in the future and we were the only humans left. And I was like, oh yeah, and then spiral from there.
I mean, a Vindaloo monster comes purely out of a sort of a drunken conversation, doesn't it? That is definitely two men at a kebab shop.
4 a.m, yeah. It's funny you mentioned The Simpsons as being an influence as well, because that used to be a big influence on me back in the day. I quoted something to Andy the other day, actually, because we were talking about uploading the previous podcast that goes up before this. And she was like, oh, it's almost done. I've got it all prepped for Sunday for you. And I replied back saying, I want it now. I want the children to see. Oh. And that just kind of stuck in my head. So I quote The Simpsons pretty much daily without even realising it sometimes. It's kind of like...
I just have this one bit of The Simpsons where Marge is falling asleep at the wheel and her head hits the horn and it goes brrr, and she goes, I'll get it, and she wakes up and falls out the car and rolls down it. Every time I'm struggling with anything, I just think of that clip and I lose it.
Whenever I'm cooking something and it's gone a bit dodgy, I always go, it's still good, it's just a little burnt, but it's still good.
Is that your patented Adam Lucas Finley hamburgers or steamed hams, whatever?
Yes, exactly.
Did I say steamed hams? I said clams, delicious. Yeah, I don't know. We're going deep now. It's too quick to go this deep.
It's too early.
Basically, she was like a combination of both me and Andy in one person. Just in terms of
I mean, there is a visual likeness as well.
Yes,
we have faces.
Course, yeah.
So
definitely see it.
Apart from the fact that I'm older than both of you, it could it could be a thing. Yeah.
So if the one-page Red Dwarf thing, is that one of the earliest things that you can remember writing, or is there anything further back than that you can recall?
Nothing stands out. I think that was the one where it was like, oh, we are writing a script. We want to write the script and we're going to do it, as opposed to just a kid in the way, because like I've got a 4-year-old now and he's always coming up with stories and I help him to write stuff down. But in terms of being of an age when you can write for yourself and having that, I think the desire and the will to actually do it, that's the thing that I think. And I think the fact that as well that we decided to type it as well was a thing. And I mean, why did we think to type it? I don't know. We'd never seen a script before. I don't know why we thought to type it. That's weird. I probably my mum has probably still got it somewhere. It'll be weird to see how I formatted it because literally I was making it. We were making up how a script, unless we'd maybe read, maybe in a like a Red Dwarf annual, there'd been like an extract from a script in there, and we'd seen that. Maybe that's a possibility. But I think it was imitation, wasn't it? So I think when you reach that age, you're starting to look for role models, maybe a bit more consciously from your world, and yeah, trying to be good at stuff as well. So around that sort of 8 or 9 kind of years old. So yeah, that for me feels like the first thing. Like I said, I wasn't. You hear about novelists who were writing novels when they were 6 or whatever. I wasn't a big reader. I didn't have a desire to. That I used to pause the VHSs and trace the drawings on the screen. You know, I that was what I just drew a lot as a child, but mostly like copying Warner Brothers cartoons and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that script I think was the first one where I tried to commit something to paper that was like an idea that that was an attempt at a story that felt important to me.
I think I can relate to that a lot because I remember doing that as well, making comics. It ended up being like 1-page comics, and then you kind of like you've run out of interest on it. And I remember doing like you do a script for it, so you know which each panel says, that sort of thing. I had a book when I was younger, which was like draw your own cartoons and caricatures. I think it's a very, very well-known book. But in there, it had a section about comics and how they're made, and it showed you the panel side, it showed you the script side. I think that's what kind of influenced me to do that. And then from that snowballed into writing scripts and that sort of thing. I kind of moved away from the art side and moved more towards the words side. But yeah, similar story as you.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder about having seen a script through the Red Dwarf Annual because I can't think how we would have come to that otherwise, me and my friend. And when it came to the comic thing, I'd read comics and my friends were into comics, but I didn't. Maybe I had a book on how to draw comics. Maybe it was even the same one. I don't remember, but I feel like I just kind of was just copying without any guidance. Like this is what a comic looks like. I wasn't doing any planning. I was sort of working out as I was doing it. So you'd see that I'd write the speech bubbles and then write the words in them, then realize the speech bubbles weren't big enough, and then do like add another little bit of a speech bubble, and that still wasn't big enough. Then there'd be lots of like mini speech bubbles coming off speech bubbles to fill the frame with like a really banal sentence, like "shoot him" or something like that. So it was completely raw, but it was it was imitation, wasn't it? And it was fandom, really. I think that's where from both the Moon Boot script and the Star Trek comic came from, which I also cast myself as a character in the Star Trek one. So I think it's very much that as a child placing yourself within stories. So it's about finding your own voice and finding yourself, I guess, or trying to look for those role models, like I said.
I think you mentioning that is quite convenient as well, because I remember when we first started this as well, when we were talking about our own influences, Andie mentioned about how she got her start in writing from fanfics, and that kind of resonates with you a lot, doesn't it, Andie?
Yes. Yeah, like I think for people who are in quite a formative stage, taking stories that already exist and working their own worlds around it can be quite informative and very, very important in the foundation of becoming a writer.
Yeah, I also, having as a child loved Star Trek Next Generation, I tried to read Star Trek novels, but I found them a bit too serious, and a bit too kind of like I love Star Trek Next Generation. It was, such easygoing TV, really, even with its stakes, even in the most stakey of episodes. But there was something about the sort of the fan fiction element of it, or the novel element of it, that felt quite exclusionary in a way for a child. It just didn't connect with me and my taste, I guess. But whereas Red Dwarf one still had that comedic tone. It was written by, I don't know. There was something else there that I think connected to me more directly and my sensibilities. I think with Star Trek it was easy TV, but also it was that sci-fi world which I liked. But with Red Dwarf, I think it was much more related to me it connected me more directly as a person, as someone who'd watched a lot of sketch comedy, who liked comedy more and was kind of the silly kid, in my class. So I felt like that was my lead into wanting to write. Older even was that through line of comedy and trying to make people laugh.
I always feel a little bit like Star Trek is kind of just by its nature made for kind of more of a grown-up audience. Obviously, they'll have comedic moments in there, they'll have more serious moments in there. Whereas Red Dwarf is very much born in the comedy, and the serious stuff is kind of like in the background as well. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I feel like it was just the sci-fi was just a playground
Yeah.
for it was the situation of the comedy. I don't even know what anything else they did, if they did anything else as a duo or solo TV wise. I literally never looked that up, never even thought about it, because for me it was never even, it was, it was an era where you could look stuff up like that, so I wouldn't have thought my fandom was about the show. And I went to like sci-fi. I didn't go to many sci-fi. Can't even remember what they're called. The big events, what are they called?
Convention.
Conventions. I think I went to one, and just sensed straight away that there were a lot of peculiar men there. And as a child, I felt a bit unsafe.
Yeah. Ghost
Yeah.
agrees.
Again, this is the 90s, so it was a different time. So I never. I think I tried that. The convention and thought, am I a Trekkie? Am I a Trekkie? Am I into sci-fi? And I think I realized actually I probably wasn't. And yeah, it was just the show, really. It was the shows. I became obsessed about particular shows, rather than makers. And I don't know how that's different now for young people growing up. Maybe they do go down rabbit holes with stuff and they can find old things. But back then it was whatever was on TV. You find the best of what was on offer that suited you as close as it could, and that became your thing. So that was mine for me. But again, I think comedy was the through line, that kept me watching TV and interested in it, really, more than anything else, more than any other genre.
I wonder if part of it is in this modern age, we have so much choice overwhelm because we've got like hundreds of channels, we've got Netflix, we've got everything on demand as well. We've not got that really amazing sensation of discovering something randomly at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 1 o'clock in the at night. We don't just stumble across gold. We're actually actively searching out things. So we need to have an idea of what we know we want to look for it. Whereas back then we didn't. We just developed it and found it.
We've developed blinkers now where like we only go for one particular genre we know we love, and we're less likely to kind of go and veer off into other places unless it's been like your big hitters, like anything on Netflix that gets popular, or like your Game of Thrones, your Stranger Things, that sort of thing. Where like it's like a public event, everybody has seen it, and you just can't avoid it, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I do find that I think you have the ability now as well to discover stuff years afterwards and
Yeah,
go back to it. And and someone will say, "Oh, did you never watch?" Like there was probably a period of, I don't know, about at least 5 years as an adult where I didn't own a TV and didn't watch any TV. And didn't play video games. I went to cinema a lot, but I didn't have a TV at home. I don't think I even had the internet at home. I'd gone sort of full Luddite in the true sense of the word, of like being quite anti that. So I missed out on, like, it was the era of Breaking Bad and all that stuff, and the start of Netflix, and yeah, I years later, I'm finding the stuff that I missed at that time that I would have enjoyed first time round, or maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I wouldn't have appreciated it because of where I was in my mindset at that point. But I find I'm getting recommendations of stuff just by going down rabbit holes of seeing a director's new show and liking it and seeing, oh, what else have they done, and then finding a show that was out 15 years ago and and finding it online and watching it. But there's something to be said, I think, that for discovering stuff in that very raw way of, like I used to have a TV in my room, but it wasn't tuned into the aerial, but to the fizziness, like it was to play on my Mega Drive. and then I had my PlayStation. But I could sometimes get a bit of TV. I remember catching a bit of, I think it's called Sleeper, a Woody Allen film where he plays a robot. Um, uh, Again, just trying to find channels, when in the fizziness in like 11 p.m., which felt like 3 a.m. because I was probably about 10 years old, but it was probably about 10:30 in the evening, and just finding like weird stuff that just wasn't on at the time when I was allowed to be watching TV, and yeah, it felt kind of illicit and exciting. And people can still do that now, of course, but they can find whole shows now. They can watch clips on YouTube. It doesn't have that same fizziness about it, but that's probably a good thing. It's probably bad for my eyes.
I remember when I was
amazed though I'm not blind from having watched so many soft porn.
I am.
At midnight. Well, you've painted yourself in a soft porn
Not
corner.
Full
there.
blind. I'll put that down there. I'm not fully blind.
I remember that's how I found Little Shop of Horrors when I was a kid, because I stayed up and snuck back downstairs to watch TV. But it was on one of the days where the clocks were going to go back, and I didn't realise, because as a kid you've kind of got no awareness of that, have you? Because you sleep through it. And I remember looking through the TV guide for something to watch, and I found Little Shop of Horrors, but because of the timings, it looked like it was only on for about half an hour. I thought, oh, I'll watch that because half an hour, and then Mum and Dad won't find me. No, it was like a full-blown film that I watched through the night. But I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and I think even going into adulthood, like The Office was a show that came before streaming, but it again had that effect of people sort of discovering it because it was on maybe BBC Two at 10:30 or something, and people didn't really know what it was, and it became this thing because people were like, "Have you watched that weird reality show set in an office?" And people were like, it sounds rubbish. Why would I watch that? And like there was a lot of gossip about it, but there wasn't really. You couldn't do it today in the same way and release it. People were too knowing, and the information's already out there.
Yeah,
and the same thing with the Day to Day, which was a show that I loved in the 90s as well. That I think my older brother was watching, and my parents a little bit, but it might have been even a bit too crude for them. And it was something that just felt like really weird to discover that, again, you would kind of know about, or you'd have to know about in order to watch now, because you'd have to select it and find it, whereas it was just kind of, it was one of the few options at the time. And it again, it comes down to quality. If that had been a terrible show, I wouldn't have kept watching it. So yeah, it comes down to the quality in the end, doesn't it? So I think regardless of streaming or otherwise, if it connects with you, it connects.
How do you think your writing has evolved from the early days of making comics and doing the Red Dwarf fan fiction into how it is now? How do you think it's evolved?
Sure. Well, the first play I wrote was, I tried to write a play when I was in college, and that's because I was doing theatre studies, which I only did because I had to do four subjects. I wanted to do art, and then every other subject was just kind of extra subjects to fill up the minimum number. But I ended up enjoying theatre studies as much, if not more so, than art. And me and a friend who was an actor and is an actor today, quite a successful actor, friend at college, we wrote something to make together. It ended up not happening, but it was the act of deciding to do a thing, and we were going to cast it and do it. And I think we just kind of chickened out of it in the end, being sort of 16 years old, and and everything that entails. But yeah, and that again was just sort of playing around in the sandbox, but with playwriting then being that sandbox, as opposed to, it was something that was more real, I guess, something that could happen. We saw that plays were just people doing stuff, and they could be funny or whatever else. It was like our version of being in a band, I guess, of like, it could be our thing, because we weren't musical people particularly, but it was something that we could potentially do that would be interesting and different. And it was on a genuine level, not just on a trying to trick people into liking you kind of way. It was something that we actually enjoyed doing as well, being in, and that comes down to having a good teacher as well, of course. So yeah, I think that idea of theatre came to my head. Seeing plays as part of that, doing my A levels opened my eyes really to that, and it was only. And I still dabbled in it a bit at university when I was studying art. We did a couple of plays as a group of undergrads to raise money for our final degree show. So wrote our own pantomime, and I co-wrote a musical about Jesus' second coming, which was loosely inspired by cats. Having never seen cats. I like saying it, but I like it at the time. The thing is, I knew it was a funny one-liner because that's how I pitched it at the time as well. Like, it's going to be exactly that. Having never read or seen Cats before, that was how I pitched it, knowing vaguely that it was about a sort of a talent contest kind of thing ish. Yeah, so it was that. It was ridiculous. But it was, again, it sort of fed that bug really that was there, and it was comedic. So I think that was coming through really, of just wanting to be the funny one or channeling that sort of absurdist and sort of I don't know if anti-establishment is the term, but like a bit sort of provocative comedy. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe to an extent, but sort of playful and a bit slapstick and a bit grotesque. So again, it's got a bit of Ren and Stimpy in there. It's got a bit of the day-to-day in there. It's maybe not Red Dwarf, but it's comedic, you know. And yeah. I think even though I'd already started to waver at that point, you know, at university, of actually enjoying that theatre stuff a bit more than what I was actually doing with visual arts. So yeah, the more I wrote after university, the more I realized that's what I wanted to do. You know, I was still very much in the playing phase at that point, and still imitating and trying to work out what kind of story I wanted to tell, or whether theatre was that form or whatever. So yeah, the first things I wrote when I was thinking, okay, I want to write plays. I wasn't thinking I want to be a playwright or anything like that, but I was just really excited by writing plays. And you know, inevitably there were short plays, and they were about being a young person trying to navigate relationships. You know, it's when you're, you know, in your 20s and you're exploring writing, it's what you write about. You write about versions of yourself and your relationships and your romantic heartbreaks and stuff. So that's, and I found little opportunities, and there was always that sort of comedic angle to it. But already I was starting to broaden my palette a little bit. So those first short plays, which I had a little bit of support from mentors through different initiatives to write, we're starting to dip into slightly more dramatic territory, but still very much drawing on my life. So I mean, the stakes couldn't have been much lower, you know. they were very mediocre men being pathetic, basically, you know.
Well, you know, when
you can't write yourself out of your life,
don't you? You write what you know. So
yeah,
you don't really have experience of anything else. So
it's true, but I didn't try to. But I didn't set it on a spaceship. You know, I could have set it on a space. It could have been a boring couple on a spaceship, but I didn't. I wanted to. I think that was how my taste was evolving at that point. It was sort of veering away from sci-fi and towards sort of maybe more my cinematic influences that I started to take hold. Again, not watching much TV in that era. It was cinema really. So it was Charlie Kaufman. It was like indie American films, but British films as well around that, the sort of early decades of the 2000s of very very much Charlie Kaufman inspired, kind of whimsical and a bit peculiar sci-fi with a lowercase s, so sort of heightened worlds, a bit absurd, but not like spaceships and guns, you know. Getting towards there. Just I think it was getting into playwriting really. I think for me playwriting was just a viable. It became a new addiction in a way. You know, it became a way of seeing the stuff that I'd written exist in the world. And like, I didn't even think about TV. Having, you know, as a child, maybe wanted to write for TV in a way, but never really thought it was possible or it was an actual job. I think suddenly writing a play felt real because I was mentored by a playwright, in one of these initiatives, and my words got performed by actors in a space, and it was exciting for people to come, especially, and to laugh at the jokes and to react to stuff. So it became addictive of trying to do that more, really. So I think that's how my career has come about, is come from that addiction to that feeling of getting that feedback from an audience instantly, which you don't get from you get from stand-up comedy, but you don't get from other forms of writing.
It's that kind of validation and that kind of like not quite instant gratification, but like that gratification of like, oh yes, I can write good and I can write funny. That's like really addictive.
Yeah, but it helped me get better as well because then I saw what did and didn't work. And I think you have an instinct for it anyway. If you watch a lot of TV and you want to write the stuff, you do it until it's like the stuff that you watch. So you develop an instinct for it anyway. So I mean, these days I can writing something. It doesn't have to be in front of an audience for me to feel like I've sort of have gauged how people would react to this scene. Mostly, still obviously you need an audience there to really know whether it fully works and whether you've got that wrong. But I think back then when you're starting, you're still working out what are the triggers for an audience. And it's still, I'm still coming to grasp with it. Yeah, coming to understand that still today, and with again evolving my practice. But in terms of the comedy element of it, I think the musicality of it, of a scene and the dialogue and comedically where you want to hit certain notes within a scene, the flow of it and pace and rhythm, it is musical, I think, and I think that comes from instinct. But it's instinct that is built through practice, like all good, improvisers, either musically or in comedy. I think writing is in the same plane of creativity because though you're kind of improvising as you're writing and then you're refining, but it's all to do with that live experience, really. So yeah, it was by that addiction was as much about improving as it was about hearing those reactions because it reinforced my ability to do that. It wasn't just look how happy I made an audience. It wasn't just look how happy the audience are. It was look how happy I made the audience. So it became that sort of that power dynamic of I'm able to control that, and it's fun and exciting. And then as someone who wrote more comedically, that to then start to explore darker elements in the story and more emotive and dramatic and tragic things, again, it started to become other areas of the palette that opened out. And as you evolve as a writer, you have your specialisms, but you also want to evolve as well. So I still feel like I'm coming to terms with that and understanding how I can achieve maybe what I learned. I've learned my skill set perhaps in one corner of the palette, and I'm still trying to broaden that out and level up my writing, really. Even today, when I write stuff, I'm still working on something, but I think the instinct is at the base of that, and I think that's come from that willingness, that desire to create that reaction and to feel that sort of power, I guess, with feeling like you're in control of that. So it is addictive, yeah.
I can agree with that because I remember when I did the screenwriting course with the London Film Academy, one of the feedbacks that I got from the tutor was he said to me, "You've made me feel things that I didn't want to feel," and he meant it in a good way. And after that, I felt, one, I'd affected this guy, but also, ooh, my writing did that. I felt kind of proud.
I mean, in terms of what you say there, I still struggle with that a little bit because I consider myself to be kind of quite misanthropic in my life, and it's hard to be misanthropic when you've got a child. You've got to redeem yourself in order to not recreate yourself in the world, or a worse version of yourself. But I find when it comes to that instinct that some writers have of, I know this is going to make people go, ooh, now, so I'm going to do that. I sometimes feel like, well, maybe that's cheap. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe that's manipulative. Maybe that, and I feel like I still wrestle with that when I'm writing, of trying to, making them feel things that they didn't want to feel. Definitely, that is ultimately the aim. But I don't feel like I have a healthy relationship with that. What is a very good writerly instinct. I think having that instinct of I'm going to make people feel what they don't want to feel is a great one to have, and the ability to do it is a fantastic ability to have as a writer. But me as a person, there's something about when I write that I still hit a kind of I don't know, some mechanism within myself of like, is this fair? Is it fair that I'm doing this to people? Which is why I think I lean towards comedy. Not that my comedy is just kind of like frilly and frivolous, like it is quite dark at times, but I feel like for me, comedy is worked best as for me as a vehicle to explore dark things. So I am manipulating the audience in a different way, but it's more like getting them on side and then pointing the finger saying, you were laughing at that, but now actually you should feel bad. As opposed to I don't know, writing a story which is more straightforwardly dramatic or tragic and present, there are lots of incredible plays and films that I love, which just terrible things happen. And I just think I couldn't just write that terrible story, a brilliant story about terrible things. I struggle with that. The thing I'm writing at the moment is a bit more straightforwardly dramatic, and it's a challenge, but I'm embracing it as just sort of an opportunity to evolve my writing in a new direction and see what potential possibilities there are that I haven't explored by allowing myself to be that writer who is evoking and invoking those unwanted feelings for an audience.
Are there any themes that you're seeing through your writing as well? Like you're seeing a repeated theme that you keep applying to different stories, or is it different every time?
I do see that there has been a reoccurring dynamic of siblings and fathers, and there was a lot of kind of brothers and fathers in my plays, stories that kind of a great piece of writing advice that I have taken, not advice that was directed at me, but was from another podcast from Script Notes via Craig Mazin, was
Love
thinking
that
about
podcast.
thinking about the central, as opposed to the central character, thinking about it as the central relationship. So every script is not about a person, but is about a relationship. The way that I've come to understand that is that a character only exists in relation to the choices they make, and those choices are always in relation to other people, so other characters. And obviously, a story needs to be about something really vital and crucial in that moment in a character's life. So inevitably, it becomes about one relationship more than others. It can be about several relationships, but there's one in the center of every story is his thesis, Craig Mazin's thesis, and it has worked for me since I heard him say that. I thought, yeah, I can sort of see, if I don't want to analyze too much through that lens. It's more like it's become a useful tool for me in writing. When I write a story, I'm thinking about what is the character trying to fix? What relationship are they trying to fix through this story? And it can be a relationship with themselves, but that our relationships with ourselves are also a reflection of how we've been parented, how we've been brought up. So quite often there is another person, an absent person, even someone that can't answer back but is present in the story. I think that's really, for me, that's become really rich terrain to think about, who is either present or absent but is influencing the central protagonist, who is directing the action in that way or applying pressure. And it might not, it could be an antagonist of sorts, but it might not be. It might be some other influence exerting them, like I said, over their emotions and their sense of self. And so fathers has figured in recent years. I mean, like I said, my son is 4 years old, so and before that, my dad was ill for a number of years before he died as well. So I think both in the lead up to being a dad and being a dad, father figures became an interesting became the important relationship for me to explore through my writing. Again, not intentionally, but stories that I end up writing would be about that. Themes around mental illness is kind of reoccurred, but also trying to write stuff which is trying to maybe get inside an experience or inside a psychology. Again, this is playwriting I'm speaking about mostly here, but I like plays that are able to bend time and get you inside a character's head and their sense of the world in a really direct and theatrical way. So I think my plays try and do that. And even back to those first short plays, they kind of did it in a playful way. And the play I'm writing now is not whimsical. It's very much about a serious and difficult experience and based on a true story. But it is trying to put you in the boots of a character who is experiencing psychosis. So that's the through line from those first short plays that I wrote, which were looking at the line between, I guess, what we perceive and what is real, and how we experience the world, and how unstable that is. So that's definitely remained. This play isn't about fathers exactly, but there's something in there very much about masculinity, which inherently speaks to fatherdom in one way or another.
I see that.
God.
I think I've mentioned this in a previous podcast for ourselves, but for me, it's just a sense of belonging, a sense of fitting in with a lot of my characters, and there is a father-son situation as well. Like there is a script that I'm currently working on at the moment, which is the police procedural, where the main character has a daughter where he has a very good relationship with them, and a son where they have no relationship with them. And it's quite an interesting dynamic to kind of work through that sort of thing. And yeah, I feel like I've got another script as well I'm working on, which is another police procedural, but it's more of a time travel-y, ashes to ashes kind of thing. And that's got more of a kind of like fitting in, not knowing where you stand at the moment, and trying to what I'm looking for, trying to kind of like wage your way through life to try and find out what your purpose is, basically. That sort of thing. What about you, Andy?
It does help. It does help if you've got a time machine.
Yes,
you're trying to find your place.
It's a very convenient narrative device. Yes. Russell T Davis, if you are listening, I like your work.
What I've learned is unrealistic expectations that everything can be solved with a time machine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was like, I think work it out for you. Let's go back in time. Never happened.
I think there's so many therapeutic benefits to fiction writing or writing in general, and I just feel like we need to interweave that creativity towards being healthy people and having healthy creative outlets with these things.
Yeah,
it does contribute.
Yeah, there's a playwright who I follow on Twitter, who on Blue Sky, and did follow on Twitter when it was a thing. And it was one of those, going around tweets that said, what is your unhealthy coping mechanism that you use in your life? And his response was writing a play about it 12 years later. And I thought it was just the specificity of the number 12 there just rang so true to me. It takes a little bit of time. I think once you're sitting in the experience, I think writing about it is a bad idea. Because A, it's not going to be a good play, and B, it's not going to do you any good personally, I think. But years later, I think, like for example, there was a play that I still haven't written, but I can see the story now because I'm long enough past that experience for it to be able to see it and remove the kind of tendrils of my emotions from that, unknot them a little bit and see actually what was story worthy within that experience. Because when you're close to it, everything feels important because it really happened. Yeah. And I've seen so many shows I haven't seen so many shows, but I've seen plays where at the end of the play, the actors come on and they're no longer acting, and they say, this really happens. This is stuff that really happens in real life, and this is why you should care about it. And they throw loads of statistics at you. And I just think, well, that's really cheap actually, because your play should be able to, like, I know that these things happen in real life. You don't need to now qualify your play by saying, and now you should actually care because it actually happens. Yeah, we know. And the play
You wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, I we can obsess over the idea that something is important because it really happened. But when we're writing a story, we're trying to find the most dramatic version of it or the most comedic version of it, which, it brings you challenges when you are writing stuff which has a political aim to it, perhaps, which isn't, which isn't my purpose as a writer. But if people are trying to write something which has a social message, which is to try and change things, then you reach that sort of ethical balance of how much of the truth are you presenting, or you don't want to misrepresent something, but at the same time, if you just, even documentaries are fiction, so there's some restructuring required to make stories work. So yeah, I understand. I don't know if I write for therapy. I don't think I've ever, if anything, I think it has the opposite effect on me, writing, in that I've become so addicted to writing that I sort of I become too conscious of my decision making in conversation sometimes, and I have to stop myself from like starting arguments just for this, just from the sake of curiosity of where would it go if I made this into an argument, because you become so conscious of the effect language can have on other people, especially in playwriting, which is so dialogue driven. You become, when you study playwriting, you learn so much about what it means to drive action through dialogue. So then just in your everyday life, when you're talking to, your partner or whatever, it can become counterproductive. It can become unhealthy because,
Yeah.
and as well, just you end up kind of storifying your life, like feeling like you're trying to find new ideas for stuff in your daily life. And it's hard to enjoy something without trying to qualify it as, is this worth going in my spreadsheet of ideas, or does it go in that other spreadsheet, which is just my memory of things that I've done in my life, and yeah, it can become quite exhausting as well. It can become quite exhausting, that instinct to write, and yeah, counter therapeutic.
So Hugh, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast, is the founder of Script East Midlands. I want to know, where did the idea come from, and what were the early days of that like?
Cool. Yeah. So last year, starting in about March or April, I was selected to be part of a writers group at Nottingham Playhouse, which was a mentored opportunity. So we're mentored by a writer who's originally from Rutland, or I think, but from the East Midlands, who had applied for Arts Council funding. Based in London, this writer had written some successful plays. Really good writer, who called Nathan Ellis, who wanted to run this writers group, and yeah, I was selected to be part of it, and so we were meant to write this play. And I was using it as an opportunity. I haven't written plays before. There were people in the group who hadn't written plays before. There were people in the group who had written plays before, but everyone had shown a strong desire to write a play, and seriousness about that. And we had a sharing at the end of the process. After 6 months, I'd written a full-length play, my first one since before the pandemic, having had multiple life events get in the way of my egoistic ambition to be writing pretend stories on and save them as PDFs.
Life can be such a bastard sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, my I dropped well below my monthly quota of failed submission email receipts. Yeah, so and part of that, I was getting to speak to Nat, the mentor playwright, about his experience of writing and writing for TV. I was asking him a lot about, because during the pandemic I was trying to write short films, trying to write TV pilots really for the first time and explore that, and getting some help and meeting people online to that and building some relationships. But I still felt a bit adrift in Nottingham with that and a bit disconnected. And he said that so this mentor and thing said that he and his friends meet up once a month, I think it was. I think they call it TV Club or something like that. But basically, they share TV pilot scripts that they're working on with each other, him and other writers, and these are writers who are selling ideas as well in TV. That they are professional to some extent in the way that all professional writers these days are professional writers to some extent, unless they're loaded. So they're jobbing, they're sending out specs, they're still applying for competitions. They've got agents, at least Nat does, I know, and so still having to put a shift in basically. So that sense of a community, I got. Well, yeah, having that community gave me the sense of something of that being missing really, and I enjoyed the writers group that I was part of, but I also felt like once it ended, I didn't want it to end, and I wanted to have that community which was sharing scripts, but there wasn't really opportunity to share TV scripts. And having been writing more of that stuff alongside writing this stage play, I wanted to have the opportunity to, in the way that I learned from playwriting and hearing the rhythms of my writing out loud on stage, I know that TV writing is different, and writing for film is different to playwriting. So even though I'd watched a lot of TV, I'd attuned myself to writing for stage for so long. So hearing the rhythm of the language out loud was a thing that I really wanted to have. So it came out of that initially, of setting up this writers group to allow for that, to give me a space to share my scripts or to learn about my scripts out loud, and yeah, just to continue, because I'd enjoyed just being around other writers. And I think coming out of the pandemic as well, it felt like I'm the kind of person that I think my friendships come from things that I do. I think my friendships are kind of bound in with my passions and my hobbies and my job. They always have been. I don't generally see people who are. I do have friends who are unconnected to script writing, but I think generally I like to have friends who are also into that stuff generally, because it's the thing I most love talking about. So I think it was just the desire to have a wider friendship group as well, and wider peer group, and just to enjoy talking about stuff. So that's where it came from. But I was also, we get frustrated all the time. Once you decide you actually want to be a writer, you get particularly frustrated, because then you start to see people getting opportunities, or you get lots of rejections, and you feel like you don't know what's going on, or how to break through to the next level. And I've won playwriting competitions. I've had seed funds and funding, and made stuff and had stuff made, and so I was at a different stage of self-hate really, and within my writing career, it wasn't I'm never going to get anything made. It was when's the next thing coming, and that next level, and how am I going to break through from being in this sort of like middle ground of having had some stuff on, to actually getting bigger opportunities and more big name opportunities and that kind of stuff. So that pushed me towards applying for Arts Council funding with the support of Nottingham Playhouse's artist development producer, a bit of support there, thinking about actually what were my personal gripes, and actually what was a sector issue in terms of playwriting specifically. So actually what are most writers, regional writers, suffering from at the moment? Like, what is the development issue? Not, why am I not getting commissions? Why aren't most regional writers getting commissioned? And I did more research, and I understood more about actually what was happening out there. I knew there were fewer opportunities than there ever had been. Just having been writing since like 2010, I could see that there are fewer opportunities, but I didn't really understand what was needed. And so this Arts Council project has been about trying to understand that, and put on some events which boost opportunities for playwrights specifically, because Arts Council doesn't fund film and TV. So focusing on playwriting, and also trying to develop Script East Midlands into an actual organisation that has longevity. So it's the writers group is always going to be, our it will always survive, no matter what happens to the sort of the legal entity of Script East Midlands, the writers group is something that can exist just with people in the room. And it's always going to be free, and it's always going to be about giving writers the opportunity to hear their whole scripts out loud. So at the base of it, there's that, and then around it is that wider desire to develop the scene, and a belief that there is a real belief that there is not just me, but lots of very talented writers who aren't getting it, I feel, a fair crack of the whip, partly because of where they're based in the country. And I don't fully understand why that's the case, but statistically it's true. And so I'm still trying to understand through this research project and to creating these opportunities, where are the gaps in writers' skill sets regionally, or in mentality, or connections. What can organizations do better, and what can a small organization or a person like me do to join the dots between opportunities that already do exist, or do I need to create new ones? So yeah, that is Script East Midlands in a nutshell.
That is so wonderfully selfless with it, because you've gone from, is it a problem that I can deal with for myself, and then you've gone, actually no, it's a whole wider industry problem. It's a location issue. How can we solve this? And not many people are doing that these days. They're all too busy turning it inwards and just secularizing themselves.
I would say,
I mean, there is a Friends episode which it does stick with me. This question of, is there such thing as a selfless act? And I don't think it is fully selfless, like, or altruistic. I think I was also suffering from an acute case of universal credit at that time as well.
Yes.
And like to the point at which where I was kind of being forced into back to work programs, which I was open-minded about. I lost my job during the pandemic, and I had been struggling since then to find work that was in line with my experience, which is a fairly common experience, I know, coming out of the pandemic. And like universal credit had been good. It allowed me to keep writing and keep an eye out for opportunities. I'd had lots of I'd had increasing teaching opportunities as well at universities, but the university sector is fucked as well. So basically everything was going to hell in a handcart, with poo smeared on that handcart, which was also on fire. The poo was burning. And yeah, it was just, it was going uphill, but without anyone pushing it. And yeah, it was just that it came about at that point where I was meeting with these like back to work schemes, which again I was open-minded about, but fucking hell, like they're not designed for people who have got like a master's education, and like
No.
they weren't, to be fair to them, they weren't trying to push me into jobs which weren't appropriate to me, and they were trying to support me, but they weren't set up to support someone like me. But I was still having to go into these meetings, and it was honestly the biggest drain on my soul, because I just felt like I need to do something actually to pull myself up here, because it wasn't that I wasn't working. I was working all the time, but I was working for free because I thought I'm going to look for jobs that are, in line with my experience and my interests and my passions and stuff, because I am experienced as an arts manager, as an educator, as well as a writer. So there's a broad range of things, but stuff wasn't happening. There weren't opportunities. So I thought, I know how to get Arts Council funding. I've done that before, but I'm going to do it from a development angle as opposed to a writer's angle. And ultimately, I will benefit from this as well. This project, I will benefit from improved connections. And though if I create competitions, I won't be able to apply to my own competitions, unfortunately. I will be improving the general, the cogs moving in the scene regionally, and increasing awareness of the scene and my association to that scene. And so much of being a writer is about people knowing that you're out there. And I think the more we can get out of our heads this sense of the region being a bubble and that we're part of a national picture, the better, I think. I think we sometimes, as writers based not in London, we can create these self-defeating narratives of, I'm not based in London, I'm not from that shithole, but secretly you think, well, if I could afford to live there, I would do. Whereas I think there's real benefits to being based in Nottingham or Leicester or Derby or whatever, in terms of a creative, being a creative person. You have more time potentially than you would do in the same lifestyle in London. Obviously, it relies on other privileges as well, but there is a greater possibility of you having time to write if you're not based somewhere which requires you to work 26 hours a day. But
And
there were
also,
also,
I'd
like I
say as
said,
well,
there's a narrative thing. There's a narrative thing about how we view ourselves, which I'm still trying to unpick. But I like I said, by trying to connect the East Midlands to the wider conversation, or trying to understand how we do, I am part of that conversation as well. So it is certainly not completely altruistic. I will definitely benefit, and I'm benefiting from it. I'm getting to meet all kinds of cool people, artistic directors from different theatres that I wouldn't have had meetings with before. All about this project, which is about writing development. It's not about my practice, but you know, just being a person who's passionate about writing, it's forming part of my career, and maybe what my career will continue to look like in the future, you know, writing my own stuff, but also supporting other writers. So anything to keep Terry from Universal Credit off my back.
you really secretly want to say a few Terry, but you can't because you really need that paycheck.
Yeah, you get sanctioned if you do that.
Yeah, that's true. I remember my very first job ever was being employed not in the job centre, but it was employed in an office that helped people get jobs, and in reality we were just doing exactly the same thing people did that were unemployed but being paid for it. And I was made redundant from it after 2 years. So I can definitely relate to it and know the.
I mean,
harsh reality of it.
I feel like there's a Kafka-esque screenplay waiting to be written about that. It just loops on forever.
Yeah. You're doing
Definitely.
your job
Yeah, no,
well, we thought we might just make you redundant so you have to do it yourself, but no pay.
Bloody hell. Yeah,
But
no,
yeah.
I like I say, I empathize with the people in those jobs, but it was just a wake up call for me of like, I need to do something different at this point. Because who knows, you know, the writing may not pay off long term in terms of a career which pays the bills. It hasn't to this point. You know, whenever I've been paid, it's always been a nice surprise, like, oh, I've got some money from my writing, as opposed to that's this month's rent, or the rent for the next few months or whatever. It's always been sporadic. So I think it was that moment of, I can keep doing this, but I also need to change my mentality a little bit. And there are things that niggled with me for years about being a Nottingham-based playwright, and it was about, again, with that support from Playhouse artistic development producer, was just to try and actually step away from myself for a moment. In the same way we're talking about writing about things that happened in your own life, I think having that bit of distance then allowed me to actually see it more clearly, and then see the opportunity in that, to see the opportunity in the challenges that I'd faced and that others were facing, the opportunity to then address those challenges and do something positive.
Agree with that. I'm gonna say there was that thing at the beginning of, before me and Andy set this up, was like, if you're not based in London or Manchester, forget it. When actually in reality it's like, well, if you are based somewhere else other than London and Manchester, you will have a unique viewpoint just from where you live, just from your locality, or a different way of looking at things than somebody who was born in London and is going to work in London, or born in Manchester and going to work in Manchester.
There is a challenge to that as well, though, because there's a temptation to fetishize your own experience, and
That's true.
you know, like saying this is what it means to be from Nottingham, and this is my screenplay that exemplifies what being someone
There
from
is no other
Nottingham
version of being in Nottingham or Leicester or whatever.
Yeah, it's like you're looking for something peculiar, but actually, you know, I think for years I thought that the East Midlands was suffering from an identity crisis, because we're not Northerners and we're not Southerners.
We're not Birmingham.
But exactly, we're not exactly. When people think about the Midlands, they quite often are talking about Birmingham when they're not from here. So like the East Midlands does have that awkwardness about it. But I think that there's so much, again, narrativizing about what it means to be a Northerner, you know, which I know plenty of Northern writers who hate being called Northern writers. They're like, I'm a writer who was born in the North or from the North. I'm not a Northern writer, whatever that means. And like, there's so much fetishizing and narrativizing about that, which becomes this North-South divide, which, we're in the middle of that, and in a way,
We have to pick
that's
one.
the reality of that. I mean, that's the most people's reality, is that they don't exist as a northern person or a southern person. They're just a person, and I think really that's something that is hard to wrestle with as a writer. Like, how do you present your East Midlandsness without it becoming a cliche or a stereotype, or without you poking into holes that actually aren't yours to poke? That's a weird turn of phrase.
I was just talking about bread rolls, but then I was like, you know what? That's a better analogy, so I'll go with that.
I think, yeah, as writers, we're looking for something that makes us distinctive. And I think when we're told to, ground our scripts or our ideas in our location, there is that temptation to, as I said, to fetishize to some extent what it means to be from a place. My desire is that a writer could be from Nottingham or from Lincoln or wherever, and not have to write about what it means to be from Lincoln. They could write a sci-fi script that's just incredible, and they are channeling their experience of being an East Midlandser, their perspective on the world, in the way that everyone has a perspective, wherever you're from. It's informed by your upbringing and the geography of and the politics of where you were, the reality of your lived experience. But we're not having to forefront that, and that is my desire ultimately with Script East Midlands and my own career. For my own career, obviously, just to write about what I want to write about. But in terms of the sector as well, I think Script East Midlands, the desire is to create more opportunities for writers who are already great to find those opportunities, but also to address those skill sets, maybe the gaps in skill sets that might be there. I don't know, that from being based not in London, perhaps. Again, still trying to work out what that means, and a lot of this project has been about that, but so that we're not having to think about, so we don't end up writing scripts that are bad because we're trying to forefront Nottinghamness or whatever in a weird way, as opposed to just channeling our East Midlandsness through our voice naturally in writing whatever the hell it is we want to write about and being awesome at it.
Thinking about like all the scripts that I've done in the past, and I don't think I've set any of them in my hometown. I don't think I've ever gone like, this is Leicester, this is Nottingham, this is blah blah blah. I've literally just wrote, and like that's just become part of my background, that I'm from Leicester and not I am a East Midlands writer kind of thing.
I don't know. I feel like specificity is important, and I think why not set it? That's my perspective. Was why not set it in Nottingham? Initially, it was just like there's no reason not to, and especially when I was writing theatrical monologues, it's very much about a character navigating a city, and so I didn't want to have to invent a city or imagine another city. There was no reason for it to not be the East Midlands. And even today, when I write stuff, sometimes it'll be set in London, but it will be for a particular reason. Like that job would be in London, for example, like that particular person's job would not be in Nottingham. It could not be in Nottingham, but maybe they're from Nottingham or something else. It still addresses that feeling of being kind of stuck in the middle, a bit in between things. Perhaps philosophically, or that idea of identity crisis comes through, or uncertainty of your place within a national character, for whatever that means. I think still comes through in what I write, but I do make conscious decisions. Like, is this set in Nottingham? If not, why not? If not Nottingham, then where is it set and why there? Because I think it absolutely changes the character, and whether they've lived there their whole life, or whether they've gone and come back, or whether they've just moved there as an adult, or what age they moved there. I don't try to go into too much detail. Like in planning, I don't think who's this character and what was their first romantic experience and what's their favorite color and all that. But I think location is such a decisive factor in forming someone. And so you're wrong, Adam, in every
Get out, Adam. Get out.
Set it in Leicester. You silly person. Set it in Leicester. Why not? Set it in Leicester. Set it in Leicester.
I'm gonna turn up to swim next month. Well, not next month. In September, and he'll be like out.
Yeah. If it's not set in Leicester, yeah. If your time traveler is not from Leicester,
have some
then I want to know that. I want to know why they're not from Leicester.
I'll take that.
So,
into mind.
to conclude this whole podcast, Finn's very wrong.
You know, you can take that. You can put on a t-shirt.
And also, he's very wrong. And also, has anyone ever said that you do look a bit like Russell T Davies?
Oh, thanks. You know, Hugh can come back next week. It's fine.
It was only when you said it, I was like,
give me compliments like that. I'm happy with that. That's fine.
It was when you brought him up, I was like, that is who he reminds me of. It was...
If only I could do a Welsh accent, then I'd literally be there. I could be a double.
See, we normally say he's Louis Theroux.
Not Louis Theroux. No, I don't have the balls to go into like all those like weird like people and stuff like that, and doing documentaries and that sort of thing about it. I don't have the patience for that.
Well, ending on a really positive note, what is the best thing about being a writer?
What's the best thing about being a writer? I think I've been doing it for so long now that I can't separate being a writer from other things that I have to do to be happy. You know,
subtle.
I know. So it's not a trying to find a positive here. I know when I haven't written for a while. Let's put it that way. Like I can feel it in my blood that I'm cooking at the wrong temperature. So I think it's it's better use of my time than actually being on crack. Yeah, cheaper than crack.
Yeah. There's less side effects.
The equivalent with writing is just having a bad back, isn't it? And a numb bum. I've got writer's ass.
And I'm feeling like you're an imposter.
That could be a positive as well. Having that could be a positive writing if you prefer to not know where your bum is at all times. Then yeah, go for it.
Sit on an ice block whilst you're writing.
God.
Get to know your prostate through writing.
And we found the pre-roll. So thank you very much, Hugh, for joining us on Path of Publication. We hope you come back at some point because I've really enjoyed having fun. That sounds wrong. I really enjoyed listening and talking and conversing with you. That's what I meant to say. I hope you come back next time. But it leaves me with nothing much more else to say other than saying thank you for joining me in this conversation.
This has been the Path to Publication.
We shall see you in the next episode. I have been Finn.
I've been Andie.
Yeah, I'm
like,
always.
Don't let me do it. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.